To be clear, I don't think Christians, believers, followers of Christ, whichever term you prefer, I don't think we should be eating bacon. Now, my reasoning is very simple. Leviticus chapter 11. Now, I think that whole chapter is pretty explicit. Don't eat pigs, don't eat shellfish, don't eat owls, don't eat lizards or bats if you eat that stuff. Overall, just don't eat the bacon. But the moment I mention this to the people, and you're probably thinking the same way too, is that, oh, you can't keep the law perfectly. Oh, we're not under the law. You're trying to earn your salvation. Oh, Christ went away with these dietary commands. Now, to be clear, I'm not trying to earn my salvation. Honestly, I think it's wild you try to assume that I'm thinking I'm trying to earn my salvation just because I'm trying to follow these commands right here. Like, salvation has always been grace through faith, not of works. I think if you look back to people like Abraham, to people like now, you are always saved by grace through faith. I don't think Abraham was saved by his works. I don't think anybody is saved by their works. Now, don't get me wrong. I think works will show from your faith, but those works won't save you itself. I still believe you should try to observe these commands to the best of your ability, but you're not going to do it 100% perfectly. Doing that's not going to save you in a sense. It's always been faith. So please don't assume I'm saying I'm trying to earn my salvation in a sense. Now, when I tell people, yeah, I'm trying to observe these commands and more specifically the dietary commands, usually I try to get bombarded with, oh, you can't keep it 100% perfectly.
Well, duh.
I mean, obviously, I can't do it 100% perfectly. There's probably no thing in this life I can do 100% perfectly. I can't love my neighbor perfectly. I can't honor my father and mother perfectly. I can't not gossip perfectly. There's nothing in life I can probably do 100% perfectly. But just because I can't do it perfectly doesn't mean I should still try to do it to the best of my ability. Because I ain't saying, oh, Steph Curry, you can't make threes perfectly, so don't shoot threes. I mean, you still try to do the best you can, but I'm not saying you can do it perfectly. From my experience, I don't see that as a purpose or a goal or an intent that you were expected to do or follow these commands perfectly. Now, obviously, there are different type of laws. You have charges, commandments, statutes, ordinances, judicials, all that stuff right there. And obviously, I can't do all that stuff. I mean, I don't have a priest to observe certain commands. I don't live in a judicial setting where I can observe these commands. I don't. I don't have an ox. I don't have a child. I don't have a menstrual cycle, so I can't observe those type of commands. But I try to observe the commands that I can do at the best of my ability. Now, some people will say that you can't observe the law or you're not supposed to observe the law. Well, I would argue that even if you say that, you do observe the law, and then you probably would teach people to observe the law also. I think a lot of that goes to how people or we in general interpret Paul's writings. Now, again, I do think Paul taught the law. I think he obviously exercised the law. I think you can look at Timothy's circumcision. You can look at the Nazarene vow, and I'm pretty sure he taught people to love other people. This is in the law. Now, I think if you're saying that if Paul taught we're not supposed to observe the law, that he would have to be teaching we're not supposed to honor our father and mother. We're not supposed to love thy neighbor as I love thyself. We're not supposed to scratch that. We can gossip. We're not supposed to help those in need. If anything, I think Paul was against the Judaizers, those who taught that we have to follow these man-made traditions and that we have to observe these commandments to be right in the faith. I mean, look into the whole idea with the circumcision. This is the same type of people I believe Jesus was against. Just look at the Talmud, which taught that you have to be circumcised to be included in the faith. Now, there is a difference in saying that you have to be circumcised to be saved versus you want to be circumcised because you're saved. Now, going back to the dietary commands, because this feels like a whole preface about it, a lot of people tell stories involving Christ, involving Peter, involving Paul that says, oh, they taught that the dietary commands are abolished or gone or don't have to follow anymore. One of those. Now, from my experience, I think people use Romans chapter 14 for Paul to say, oh, you're not supposed to judge people on what they eat or drink. Well, there's a difference in judging people when they eat or drink if it's against God's commands. Now, I made a video about this a while ago. I think the whole Romans chapter 14 involves fasting days and which days you choose to fast. Now, there is no command from what I see on what days you're supposed to fast. And we shouldn't be saying, oh, I fast on Wednesday. Oh, I fast on Thursday and causing disunity. Now, I think that's the purpose of chapter 14. We can talk about this another time if you want to talk about it. But I don't think you can use it and say, oh, Paul said we're against these commands or we're against the dietary commands or any of that nature. Now, if anything, I see people use Peter's dream to say, oh, we don't have to observe these dietary commands. God made these unclean animals clean now. Now, if you don't know, the gist of the story is that Peter had a dream of clean and unclean animals. A voice says, kill and eat. Peter says, I never eaten anything clean or unclean. And the voice responds with, what God had cleansed, no longer considered unholy, and repeat that process about 2 more times. Now, I think the whole meaning is already answered in Acts 10, verse 28. And he said to them, you yourselves know that it is forbidden for a Jewish man to associate with or visit a foreigner, and yet God has shown me that I am not to call any person unholy or unclean. Now, some people would say that passage right there still has a double meaning. Why would God say we can kill these unclean and clean animals? Well, first of all, he told Peter that. Now, if I had a dream of all these animals, clean and unclean, and I get a voice says, kill and eat, the whole idea, and I wake up greatly perplexed, not knowing the meaning of the dream, maybe that's not the meaning of the dream. Like Peter woke up greatly perplexed after that dream. A dream that seemed really obvious to some people, but maybe that obvious wasn't the true intention of that dream. It was what Acts chapter 10, verse 28 stated. God was using the dream to show Peter to not associate the foreigner with being unclean or unholy. But now it goes to Jesus himself, the whole story of the unwashed hands. And some people might use that verse to say, oh, what goes in my stomach doesn't defile me, which I don't think you can use it to say unclean foods and stuff like that. Because the whole event was based on unwashed hands and the traditions of men. And if you don't know this story, the whole gist was that the Pharisees confronted Jesus because his disciples didn't follow the tradition of washing their hands before eating. For them, this was a big deal because it violated their human man-made traditions about ritual purity. With Jesus responding by saying that what goes to your stomach doesn't make you unclean, it's what comes out of your heart, like evil thoughts and actions. That truly defiles a man. Again, I think the whole focus on ritual hand washing. But to say, oh, pork goes in my stomach doesn't defile me, well, I have to ask you this question then. Like, think about this. If God told me not to eat a fruit from a tree, and I go, whoa, God, what goes in my stomach doesn't defile me, is that a stomach issue or a heart issue? I mean, obviously, that is a heart issue. That's disobedience to God. And I think the same principle applies with the unclean foods. God told us not to eat bacon. But if I eat bacon and I say, hey, God, what goes to my stomach doesn't defile me, well, it's a heart issue of doing that bacon, though. Or ignorance, or you just don't know, all that stuff. Yeah. But if you look into Mark chapter 7, verse 19, some translations have like parentheses to kind of indicate what the meaning of it was. But if you look at other translations, some don't. For example, translations like the NSAB, NIV, ESV, they have statements like, does he declare, or in saying this, Jesus made all foods clean. When we look at other translations like the KJV, literal translations, or even just the Greek, there appears to be no phrasing of like, does he declare? It just goes by cleansing all foods clean. Now, this is a significant part because if the phrase was declaring all foods clean, or something similar to the NSAV or NIV or ESV, some people may use it to suggest that Jesus abolished the food laws regarding unclean foods. But even if you take that approach, you would still have to wonder why it seems that Jesus changed the law, or more importantly, why wouldn't the Pharisees try to get Jesus if he seemingly told them that they can eat pork or shellfish or bats or whatever? It appears that the Pharisees did not try to get Jesus on these seemingly, if that's what he's telling people about eating unclean foods. But if the meaning is just purifying all the foods, it's about the stomach's natural ability to purify what's consumed, aligned with the whole context of unwashed hands. I mean, yeah, you can have some dirt on your sandwich and eat it, but it's gonna be cleansed through your stomach. Granted, I think you should wash your hands though. But there will be no confusion on that meaning. Now, honestly, I think the latter interpretation best fits the meaning of the passage. It's about whether eating food with unwashed hands defile you, not about abolishing foods like pork or shellfish. Overall, I just say get off the bacon.